witnesses. Nice to see you again. So in response to a production order or documents motion here at the committee around Ms. Fisheren's appointment, PCO, as the witnesses referenced, has provided documents, and there's 107 pages, pages 12 to 30, pages 48 to 66, pages 78 to 84, page 97 to 103, are in total 41 pages. You can see them here in all the yellow stickies were redacted. They were redacted, which seems to be a PCO habit these days. Can you tell me who told you to redact these pages?
Mr. Chair, as I noted from the outset, as public servants, we are obligated under the Privacy Act to protect personal information. That said, I would just really emphasize for the committee that we have taken some very exceptional measures to provide as much information as possible to strike a very delicate balance of giving the committee the information that they need to do their work while respecting the personal information of the individuals who were qualified for the various processes. And I would just say above and beyond that, we also had sought Ms. Fisheren's agreement to provide details for her appointment.
But that wasn't my question. Who authorized or said that these pages should be redacted in PCO?
Mr. Chair, we operate under the auspices of the Privacy Act, and we would have gone through the pages ourselves. My team would have looked and applied the Privacy Act. If we had any questions, we would have consulted with our legal counsel. As
the Department of the Prime Minister's Office, did the Prime Minister's Office review this before it was released?
Not to my knowledge, Mr. Chair. If they had an opportunity, not from our office, they wouldn't have reviewed it, no.
Will you table with the committee all the emails within PCO and PMO with regard to, with this committee, with regard to what should be done with these documents before it was tabled in committee?
I'm not quite sure I understand the question, but...
Well, you would have had lots of communication, email back and forth when you got the stack of documents about what to redact and hide from the committee and what not to. So will you table those emails with the committee?
We'll endeavour to see if we have any records on hand that could be helpful in that work, for sure.
Okay, so, you know, it's really hard to get at the details of this thing because, of course, Mr. Fisheren testified, and the first answer is usually the correct answer. She testified 3 times that she has not applied for anything in her life, and that Minister Baines called her twice before that. And a week later, she wrote a letter saying, of course, she applied, and I suspect she applied after she had had the 2 calls from Minister Baines. So does anything that you've redacted here deal with the issue of Minister Baines' phone calls to Ms. Fisheren to talk about taking this on to the job she didn't apply for?
Mr. Chair, we have provided the information as requested, so that would include the advice letter. As I mentioned, the advice letters that were requested, it would also contain personal information about the applicants. I would just underscore that we did note in our letter back that we didn't have any documents that had any transaction to the member's question between ourselves and the minister or the minister's office or the Prime Minister's office for that matter on her application or any further details.
So you're obviously aware, the witness is obviously aware that we've been now 3 weeks dealing with, in the House, with a privilege motion of the breach of privilege of the House order for documents related to SDTC from every government department, which did not say censor them, redact them, but the government has redacted quite a few, including PCO is on the list. So if these documents were provided to the law clerk, were they provided in this form, redacted?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Sorry about that. Yes, Mr. Chair, we would have provided exactly the same redactions to the package that we would have provided to the law clerk, and we would be consistent with the law.
This is the list from the law clerk of the latest redacted departments versus the ones that didn't redact. There's a small list of didn't redact and a long list of did, and a couple of agencies here that have actually refused to comply. So what I'd like to know, because you're part of the Privy Council team, is who in the Privy Council office made the decision to send the order out to to government departments saying, we want you to filter the House of Commons request through the Privacy Act and the Access to Information Act. That filter, which was not part of the House's motion and is the point that we're discussing for the last 3 weeks in the House. Who made that decision to send that filter out?
Mr. Chair, I wouldn't really be in a position to answer that. My assumption was I was here today to discuss the appointment. I guess to try to be as helpful as I can be on this point, we would apply the legislation, the Act,
I appreciate that, but that's not what the House order was. So I'd like you to please table with the committee.
Point of order.
Just 1 second, Mr. Perkins. Yes.
Again, I respect my honourable colleague, who himself was a government and council appointment before this time, is asking questions that the witness is clearly not able to answer and not her responsibility.
So,
and he's asking.
Okay, Mr. Duran, you are up in just a.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, have a little respect for witnesses, and maybe we can get somewhere.
Is
have a little respect for your colleagues in the House.
Gentlemen, Mr. Duran, you are up next. The witness being quite forthcoming.
I'm in the phone book.
Ms. McClymouth is answering questions. Okay, gentlemen.
They do in Nova Scotia.
Okay, Mr.
You
Perkins, you're not
this
helping as
country.
well. Mr. Perkins, the floor is going to be yours in a second. I'm going to turn it back over. You have a little bit of time left, and then we'll go to Mr. Duran. But the witness is not being maltreated here, is responding to the best of her ability, in my opinion, is being as forthcoming. And I recognize Mr. Perkins is probing, which is his right to do. So, Mr. Perkins, I don't know if you want me to go right to the witness, because you've only got about 20 seconds left, or do you want a little bit of time? All right, you've got time to finish your questions, and then we'll hear from the witness. Thank you.
Will you table with this committee the person in PCO and PMO that sent out the order to say redact the documents on these two acts? Could you table that name with this committee, please, at some point?
Yes, unfortunately, I don't have that in front of me. I wasn't prepared
you
to
can
speak
table
to
it
that
in the
today,
future.
but we will go back and check with our colleagues and do our best to get it to the committee
Thank
as
you.
quickly as possible.
A motion adopted by this committee ordered the production of all communications between the PCO and then Minister Baines's office, the Prime Minister's office, and the Department of Industry respecting the appointment of Annette Verscheren as the chair of the Green Slush Fund. In response to that order, you wrote to the committee on behalf of PCO indicating that aside from one document that is being hid by the Trudeau government from this committee on the basis of cabinet confidence, no communications can be found. How is that possible?
Mr. Chair, it's a fair question for the member to ask. We did go carefully through the documents. We had nothing on hand. I myself was in Rima's position, Ms. Hamwey's position at the time of the appointment, and I have racked my own brain to make sure that there's nothing more that we could share with the committee, but it is, we do not have any records. I would, yes, go ahead. Sorry.
Through you, Mr. Chair, with the greatest respect, I find it incredible that we have an appointment, a government appointment, of the chair who is responsible for overseeing $1 billion taxpayer dollars, and the position of the PCO, the Prime Minister's Department, is that not a single communication, other than one, so not even an email, can be traced in the PCO, the Prime Minister's office, the Department of Industry, and former Minister Baines's department and office. I have a real tough time accepting that.
Mr. Chair, as I mentioned at the outset, we've provided all of the documents that we have. The advice letters are the final records that we keep of the deliberations of the selection committee and the advice provided to the minister. And we do not maintain other documents. We do.
Not a single email that can be found in anyone's inbox in the Prime Minister's office, the Department of Industry, former Minister Baines's office, not even a single email. And I'll tell you, I've got to say, for you, Mr. Chair, that why I'm having more difficulty accepting that answer is based upon the news of today. in which Blacklocks reported this morning that an IT official in Justin Trudeau's government deleted emails and texts relating to Trudeau's $60 million Arrive scam. In other words, the Trudeau government was willfully destroying evidence to cover up Arrive scam. And now we have another Liberal corruption scandal involving $400 million that improperly went out the door during Ms. Verscheren's tenure as chair of SDTC. And this committee is trying to get to the bottom of why former Liberal Minister Navdeep
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Just 1 second, Mr. Cooper. Yes.
It's just he's making false accusations.
Mr.
The member knows that it's a conservative
Mr.
member
Duray,
who made
this is not
donations.
a point of order.
It's a conservative member who made donations.
Mr.
It's a
Duray, your
conservative member
side
who made
is up in a
donations. I
minute.
just want to point out the record. Well, the truth is important, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Duray, and this is we go back and forth, and hopefully at the end of this process, we do get to the truth. But your member is up next in about 2 minutes. Mr. Cooper, you have the floor.
This committee is trying to get to the bottom of why former Liberal Minister Navdeep Bains appointed Ms. Verscheren as chair of SDTC, notwithstanding the fact that she had blatant conflicts of interest, and he knew about those conflicts of interest. And now all of a sudden, there's no records, no communications that can be found? How convenient.
Mr. Chair, I would just reiterate that we have done our best to provide not just the documentation that we have, but to be as forthcoming as we can be to find the right balance, to support the committee in its work by redacting personal information, but giving the minutes of the committee meetings and the outcomes of the reference checks. All of that information was provided to the committee, and we took the exceptional measure of seeking Ms. Verscheren's approval and consulting the Privacy Commissioner to provide as much detail as we could.
With the greatest of respect, Mr. Chair, is that if, in fact, there are no emails, no communications whatsoever that can be found, it demonstrates that Ms. Verscheren's appointment was cooked up by Minister Bains to see that Justin Trudeau's preferred candidate was put in place. It demonstrates that the process, there was no process. It was cooked up by Minister Bains. It was a sham to get this conflict-ridden person, Ms. Verscheren, who was receiving $12 million in funding from SDTC at the time of her appointment. It's a disgrace.
Ms. McClement, I want to start with you. Am I correct? You've worked at the Privy Council office for about 20 years, or at least 20 years?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Tomorrow, actually, I will have 30 years in the government. So I started in 1994 at the Department of Canadian Heritage as a management trainee, and I joined the Privy Council office working in plans and priorities in 2003.
So congratulations on nearly 30 years. That's an excellent accomplishment. So you are very familiar with government and how government operates and your duties as a public servant. First of all, to whom do you report currently in your current position?
I'm the Deputy Secretary to the Cabinet for Senior Personnel and Public Service Renewal. I was appointed on the recommendation of the Prime Minister in 2021, and I report through the Clerk of the Privy Council office.
And did you discuss with the clerk your testimony today?
I certainly gave the clerk a heads up in terms of how I was going to approach things, some of the questions that we thought would be anticipated, and how best to support the committee in their deliberations.
So this is getting to where my concerns are. You are a 30-year public servant. You report directly to the clerk of the Privy Council, but yet the actions that you and your office have undertaken are actually contrary to the Constitution. You came here today and you said in response to previous questions that you withheld information from Parliament, that you redacted information that Parliament has the constitutional authority to request. Do you accept that Parliament has the constitutional authority to call for documents without redactions?
Mr. Chair, I understand very well, and I'm following very closely as a student of public policy the debate that's actively going on. I would reiterate my opening comments that we are responsible as public servants, and that this is an active debate that goes well beyond me and my responsibilities. I understand the law clerk's position and the opposition's position, but I also am bound and swore an oath when I took office as a public servant that I would respect the laws that we are bound by, and we are bound by.
I'm going to interrupt you, though, but you also, as part of that oath, part of the oath we all take as parliamentarians is to respect the Constitution. And the Constitution provides Parliament with the unfettered authority to call for documents. This is laid out very clearly. Beauchesne says very clearly, committees may send for any papers that are relevant to their orders of reference. Within this restriction, it appears that the power of the committee to send for papers is unlimited. The law clerk has been very clear. Boskin-Gagnon is very clear. This helpful document here, based on principles firmly established in constitutional parliamentary law, and goes on to say, a house of a committee has the full authority to summon and compel the attendance and testimony of any person and to summon and compel the production of any document. It's very clear. There's no gray matter here. It's very clear. Parliament has the authority to request documents unredacted. But here we have 100 and some odd pages with heavy redactions that are unconstitutionally made because Parliament has the authority to call for these documents. It's very clear. Do you accept that Parliament has this authority, or is the position of the Privy Council Office that you are above the Constitution and you have the authority to black out information rather than provide the information duly requested by a committee? Is that the position of the Privy Council Office?
Mr. Chair, I would just reiterate it has been the position of consecutive governments that the application of the laws that Parliament passes have to be respected in the production of documents, and that is what we have done here. We have protected information under the Privacy Act, solicitor-client privilege, cabinet confidences, and sensitive business information. That's our obligation under the law as public servants.
I would make it very clear. There are clear examples within this very Parliament, within this the 44th Parliament, where committees have ordered and individuals have produced documents that even violate solicitor-client privilege. This power is higher than solicitor-client privilege, and yet the Privy Council Office says that you are above the Constitution. I find that wholly unacceptable when Parliament as a whole, Parliament as the House of Commons passed and these committees passed information, and yet you've taken it upon yourself as the Privy Council Office to block that information that has been duly requested. I think it's highly troubling that this is the position that PCO has taken.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to go through the steps that led to the appointment by former Liberal Minister Baines of Annette Verschaeren as chair of SDTC. Is it correct that on March 15, 2019, PCO provided a short list of 5 recommended candidates for chair of SDTC to then former Liberal Minister Navdeep Baines?
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
And Ms. Verschaeren was not on that list, correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay. We know based on the report of the Ethics Commissioner that in April 2019, Minister Baines called Ms. Verschaeren. Then, on April 30th, 2019, a month and a half after PCO had provided Minister Baines with a short list of 5 recommended candidates, Ms. Verschaeren submitted an application. She was interviewed by the selection committee on May 14th, 2019. Correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
And just to confirm, the selection committee was comprised of representatives from Minister Baines's office, the Prime Minister's office, as well as representatives from the Department of Industry and PCO, correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay. And then on May 21st, 2019, a second letter was sent by the PCO to Minister Baines adding to the short list of recommended candidates with a 6th name, that being Ms. Verschaeren, correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay. And how many candidates did PCO interview between March 15th, 2019, when the short list of 5 recommended candidates was submitted to Minister Baines, and when PCO provided it's the second letter with Ms. Verscheren's name on May 21st, 2019.
So, Mr. Chair, maybe I'll just go through a few numbers. So, for the March 15th letter, there would have been 54 applicants at that time.
My time is limited, and I asked a very straightforward question, and I understand there were 54 candidates that applied in the fall of 2018. Ms. Verscheren wasn't one of them. There was a short list of 5. I'm asking how many were then interviewed between the letter with the 5 recommended candidates on March 15th and the second letter on May 21st, 2019, when Ms. Verscheren's name was added to the list.
Yes, I'm sorry. I see your question. So there would have been an additional 47 applicants. 16 were shortlisted, and 3 interviews were conducted for the May 21st, 2019 letter.
There were 47 additional applicants between March 15th and then.
That's correct.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. No, and that's not correct. Between October of
No, I'm asking you, I just want to be very clear. I'm asking between March 15th, 2019 and May 21st, 2019.
Correct. So we reviewed applications, Mr. Chair, on
how many were submitted between that time? You had a short list. It was in the minister's possession for a month and a half. Then he calls Annette Verscheren and asks her to apply. She applies, she gets interviewed, she gets added to the list. How many other candidates did you interview, did the selection committee interview during that period?
We interviewed an additional 3 candidates.
And had they applied after March 15, 2019?
No, they applied after October 12, 2018.
They hadn't applied after March 15th. So Ms. Verscheren was the only candidate that applied after March 15th, 2019. And it just seems, is that correct?
Mr. Chair, I would just clarify, and I apologize because I know it is confusing with all these different dates, but we reviewed applications on October 12, 2018, and we interviewed 8 individuals for that first batch for to March 15th, 2019. In that intervening period between October of 2018 and May 2nd of 2019, an additional 47 people applied. We shortlisted 16 and we interviewed 3.
And what was the last date that you provided?
May 2nd, 2019.
May 2nd, 2019. And of the candidates that were shortlisted, 6 candidates.
16 candidates were shortlisted.
Well, 6 candidates were made the final list to the minister.
Correct.
6,
Correct.
not 16. 6. How many of those, other than Ms. Verscheren, had conflicts of interest with SDTC?
Mr. Chair, I would apologize that that's going to be personal information, and I would not be able to provide details of the 5 other candidates and their personal circumstances. I would refer back to the fact that we did provide the summaries of each one of those individuals in terms of their candidacy through the selection committee review and the reference checks.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks for some of your answers today. I just want to get back to a question that Mr. Perkins, I think, asked earlier. Who directed you to redact these documents? Because it didn't come on your own volition. We know very clearly that Parliament has a right to order these documents. So who ordered you to redact these documents?
Mr. Chair, I would say that
No, I'm not asking. You would say a straight question, straight answer. Who ordered you to redact these documents?
Mr. Chair, when a request comes in, either through the Access to Information Act or production of papers, central coordination within PCO will send out a request, and we are requested to comply with the request that's been presented, like I said, either under the ATI or production of parliamentary documents. And it would be...
Ms. McClintock, I'm going to interrupt you. This is not under the ATIP Act. It's not under the Privacy Act. It's a direct order from Parliament. We have unfettered access to records as long as those records exist in Canada. That is the law. The law clerk has stated as such. Parliament has ordered, who directed you or someone else to redact these documents before sending them back to us? And it's not a group decision. It's not something in the ether. I would like the name of the person who directed you to redact those documents, please.
Mr. Chair, I would say it's the Access to Information Act
Okay,
that we
I'm sorry, I'm
rely
going
on.
to interrupt you. The Access to Information Act is not a person. It did not all of a sudden become sentient and order you to redact those documents. What is the name of the person who ordered you to redact the documents
Mr. Chair,
to present to committee,
point of order.
please?
I'm just going to making assumption that somebody ordered. The witness is trying to explain how they go through the process, but won't let the witness finish the answer. I'm having a hard time understanding. If we wanted to get to the bottom of the truth, we must let the witness speak. Let the witness speak.
Mr. Durant, your side will be up in just a few short minutes. Mr. Well, it's
Sorry,
true.
Mr. Chair, we have to have an orderly debate. I don't care.
No, actually, Mr. Durant, this is not a debate time. This is
Exactly. When a
is
member of
Mr.
Parliament asks a question, we have to let the witness answer.
Mr.
And we're
Durant,
not letting the
Mr.
witness
Durant,
answer. We keep
you are
interrupting.
wrong about that. This is
Absolutely. No, I'm not wrong. I've been here for 9 years. This is not how we
you've
operate
been wrong
on
for
committees.
9 years. This is the member's time, and that applies to your side as well as the opposition, to ask the witnesses, to interrupt them, to refocus the question.
I'm just wondering, Mr. Chair, are we opining on the witness's testimony, or do we want the answer? This is what I'm asking. Do you want the truth, or do you want members?
The truth.
We might as well not have witnesses if they're not able to answer.
Mr. Durant,
I'm
I'm sorry you don't like the way the opposition asks questions, but they're entitled to ask it.
They're not asking questions. They're opining. They're asking a question and then
That's
keep
your
interrupting.
interpretation, sir. That's your interpretation, and we give you the opportunity to ask questions your way and to ask the witnesses to
I don't
focus.
Interrupt the witness when they answer because
actually, Mr.
I
Durant,
have respect.
I think you interrupt people more than I think you realize.
I know, man.
Mr. McCauley, and again, what I see here, Mr. Durant, is every time you jump in and interrupt the officials here, it looks like you've got something to hide. The official is actually doing a job here.
You're opining on my opinion.
Well, I am, because you're sitting there doing the same thing to me.
Because I cannot listen to the witness. That's the point, Mr. Chair. If we are going to have an honest conversation here, we must let the witness answer the question.
Right. All right.
Simonek.
Well, except the opposition has got a great point that there are rights from Parliament that have not been respected. Mr. McCauley is trying to get to that very answer and trying to do so.
Point of order, Chair.
Mr. Durant, your side will have an opportunity
Point
for
of order,
5
Chair.
minutes. Yes, Ms. Khalid. Oh, really? All right. Yes, Ms. Khalid.
Thank
a good
you
one, Francis.
very much, and I do have to say that there is a point to be made about decorum. And as chair, it is very difficult for members of all parties for us to digest your own opinions on this committee. As you know, Chair, and I respect you immensely, but being neutral, being nonpartisan on this committee is very important, and I really appreciate that my colleague has expressed his views, and I have said this time and time again, that when witnesses come before committees, they should be given the opportunity to respond to the questions that they are being asked. This is not an interrogation. This is not an opportunity to grasp whatever clips the opposition may want to fundraise off of tomorrow or today. This is, a fact-finding mission, as Monsieur Drouin clearly pointed out. So, Chair, I would really expect you to do your job as Chair, to be nonpartisan, and to ensure that there is decorum in how we operate as members and how we treat witnesses in this committee.
Tom would have cut you off at a...
Thank you.
Yeah, he would have.
Thank you thank you very much. I'm going to go back to Mr. McCauley. Again, as I've said, this time belongs to the members. Mr. McCauley has been respectfully asking just to pinch the question in a little bit more. Mr. Drouin, you're your own worst enemy here when you interrupt yourself. Ms. Khalid, I'm equally hard on the Conservatives when they do the same. When they do, I stopped the meeting and waited for one Conservative member today because I was tired of him lobbying at your side. So if you weren't here for that, I'm sorry.
I've been on this committee for a year.
Mr. McCauley, you have the floor. Again, you've got just over 3 minutes.
Holding the information that the committee has ordered.
Mr. Chair, I'm not sure I quite understand the member's question. At the end of the day, we would have been the ones to determine the redactions within my group.
So PCO, and the Prime Minister is the Minister in charge of PCO. Again, I'll go back to the original question. Who ordered or directed these documents to be redacted? It has to come from someone. It wasn't on its own. Who, please?
Mr. Chair, as I mentioned, there is a central coordinating unit within PCO who directs when we get requests for parliamentary documents, to prepare the documents, to respect the requests from the parliamentarians, and to apply the necessary legislation.
Walk me through the process. Did you receive this and then go to this central governing board? Did they provide it in writing? Was it a phone call, an email?
We normally get an email sent out at senior levels, so the email probably would have come to me directly or perhaps to
Would you
Rima.
provide that email to us, please, with the directions?
We can certainly have a look if we have that on hand, Mr. Chair, and we'll do our best to provide it as quickly as possible.
You mentioned on hand, and I'm greatly concerned. You mentioned other documents that you quoted, we don't keep documents. You repeatedly referred to the ATIP law, but government has very specific instructions on holding and keeping documents. And yet earlier you stated, when Mr. Cooper was asking, there was only one email about a specific subject. You stated, well, we didn't keep the records, we didn't keep documents. Are you following what is required on the Information Act or the ATIP Act on keeping records?
Mr. Chair, we absolutely hold the responsibility as good stewards, and information management is a top priority for me in our branch, and we absolutely take that responsibility very seriously. As I've mentioned to the committee, the selection committee processes are really like an interview panel where people take notes, and we use those notes as the final documents of the advice letter.
Those notes have to be kept, though. They are required to be kept. But you threw them out.
Mr. Chair, as I mentioned, they're handwritten notes, and they are considered transitory.
I'm sorry, handwritten notes are required under the ATIP Act to be kept. They're not to be thrown out. They're no different than texts or emails. They are required to be kept. Do you not see an issue here?
Mr. Chair, as I've mentioned, the notes are used to formulate the final advice, and that is the final record. And that is the requirement in terms of our record keeping, of our obligations, both within the organization but also under the law, to keep a final record of the deliberations of the selection committee.
How much time, sir?
One last question, brief.
Just very quickly, just walk me through a simple, real easy one. The good behavior appointments, you said they have a very high bar for dismissal. I'm looking at the process for hiring. Everyone does have to sign off on the Governor Council Appointments Candidate Declaration Certification Form, which covers the ethical and political activity guidelines for public office holders. Very clearly, a lot of the directors violated that statute. Why is it so difficult to terminate them when they very clearly failed to follow the rules under the ethical and political activity guidelines for public office holders? I think they met a very high bar in violating these conflicts of interest.
Thank you, Mr. McCauley. I'll allow the witness to answer.
Mr. Chair, it's a very fair question that the member asks. What is the bar for good behavior appointees? And as I've mentioned, I'm not a lawyer by training, but our lawyers have advised us that it's cause, and cause is generally where there is a illegal activity or fraudulent activity, or to the member's point that a law has been broken. We would have to do an investigation and have a very solid dossier in order to remove someone. In this case, the individuals resigned before that course of action could have been taken.